So now for something completely different. 3 little words. I love you. It's a girl. Up yours, lady. I've heard them all. 3 little words can have a lot of meaning, and they can be very powerful. But what I wasn't hearing in April of 2011, on the verge of what was going to be our 4th election in 7 years, was anybody talking about that election, at least not my people and not on Twitter. And I wondered about that because people on Twitter talk about everything, and women on Twitter really talk about everything. And moms on Twitter, well, there's no subject that moms on Twitter won't talk about. So why weren't we talking about this? So on April 5th, I was having my nightly BBM chat with the women that save my life every night, and these are very, very smart women. And we were talking about it, and we said, where is that conversation? Where is our community? Why aren't they talking about the election? And we decided that maybe what we should do was try to get that conversation started. So the very next day, April 6, 2011, I tweeted, "Do you know who you're voting for? Do you know the party stands on family issues? We need to mom the vote." Mom the vote. Thanks. Mom the vote, that's it. 3 little words, a question I asked. I put it out there on Twitter. I challenged my community to start talking about this election. And what we discussed in my little BBM group was, maybe every day we would throw some issues out there that the parties were talking about, family issues, which, by the way, is every issue. Every issue is a family issue. And we thought maybe, we'll kind of tackle one party at a time and talk about what they're doing and try to get that conversation started. So we did that. We challenged our community to start talking. And our community listened. They retweeted my tweet, and retweeted it, and retweeted it, and retweeted it. And the Mom the Vote hashtag was all over Twitter, and within days, it exploded. So we did what everybody with the internet and a message would do, and we started a Facebook page. And the Facebook page was something very, very different from our Twitter stream. These were very different people. These were not people I necessarily interacted with on Twitter, and these were very engaged people and very passionate people. And I wasn't sure what I was in for, but I knew one thing, and that the ride was going to be a thrilling one. So within 4 weeks of starting the Facebook page, we were getting about 60,000 impressions per week. Every single post that went on the Facebook page, every single sentence that somebody put down on the Facebook page was netting about 2,000 impressions per post. That was pretty big. On Twitter, meanwhile, we were netting 4 million impressions per week. Our community had taken notice. We had started asking the questions that we needed to ask, and more than that, the world beyond our Twitter community had taken notice. Margaret Atwood took notice. She retweeted the hashtag over and over again, which was a personal thrill for me. And most importantly, the politicians were taking notice. Credit where credit is due, the Liberal Party was the first to reach out, and they did aggressively, and they did repeatedly, and they made themselves available online to anybody that wanted to talk. The NDPs and the Greens, they followed suit. They made themselves available. They incorporated the Mom the Vote message into their materials, into their press releases, into their platforms, which was thrilling. The Conservatives did nothing. We did reach out to them, and they didn't get back to us. They haven't during this provincial election as well, just telling the truth. But then something really interesting happened. This all of a sudden went beyond Twitter. It went beyond social media. And the mainstream media took notice. Now, before I get into that, let me just tell you a little bit about myself. I am, by trade, by profession, and by passion, a copywriter. I have been a professional copywriter for 11 years, and I have 2 specialties. One of my specialties is writing very prosaic, very flowery liner notes for nature sound, ambient music, and classical music CDs. And my other specialty is ad writing. And when you're writing ads, it needs to be catchy. You need to come up with engaging headlines. You need something that people can glom onto, can really just, something that makes an impression. So in the weeks following the launch of Mom the Vote, people kept saying to me, well, how did you come up with this movement? How did you spearhead this movement online? And I said I didn't. All I came up with were 3 little words, a catchy little tagline, and you know, I didn't want people just to listen, I wanted people to talk. So I had to give them something that they could equally call their own, something that they could grab and they could run with and they could talk about themselves. And that's what was happening. So the Globe and Mail called me first, and they wanted to do a phone interview. And I hate talking on the phone, but I know how to do it. So I gave them their interview, and I thought it went really well. But then they wanted to do a photo shoot. And that was when I really freaked out. Number one, I've got a face for Twitter. Number two, I have the housekeeping skills for Twitter. And they wanted to come over and they wanted to do a photo shoot in my house. And that was really what I freaked about. That's what I was worried about. Never mind the interview. I know I can speak. I know I can be smart sometimes. But I didn't want my photo taken. And what ended up happening was they ran a really big photo on a really big page, and the picture was of me sitting at the table with my little netbook and my two very adorable kids sitting on the table behind me making faces, and I thought, oh, great. Never mind my message. All I'm going to hear is, oh, she's one of those mothers that lets her children run wild while she's online. And maybe that's true, but I didn't want it to be in the Globe and Mail. So next up, the CBC National called, and they wanted to do an interview with me. You don't say no to the National. So I really had to clean my house because they were coming over to do a live television interview. So I got the house cleaned, and I kept the kids on the floor. And that went really, it went really well. And then the Star called, and I did an interview with the Star. And then Maritime Morning called, and I did a morning radio interview. And then CBC Metro Morning called, and they wanted to talk to me about Mom the Vote. And I let Emma Waverman do that on behalf of Mom the Vote because they wanted her at 5 in the morning. And I'm not smart before 8. So she did that one. But, you know, through it all, amazingly, you know, the thing that really struck me as I was doing this and as the media took notice was this is something that had gone beyond social media. This was not a social media campaign. This was a campaign that had started on social media, but it had gone far beyond that. And think about Twitter, think about Facebook, and think about blogs even to a certain extent. Most of what we do is reactionary. Most of what we say, whether it's completely profound or completely mundane and all in 140 characters or less, is usually in reaction to something. And I think that's amazing. Twitter is actually probably my #1 source of news and information. It is for most people, but at least in this room. You know, but if you look at the trending topics, if you look at what's going on, okay, ignore the who your baby mama hashtag, like ignore that one. But if you look at the rest of the trending topics, we're usually talking about things that are happening in real life, on the news, in popular culture, and we're reacting to that. I think it's totally amazing. I think that, you know, as Jeff had said earlier, everybody knew what was going on when the tragedy in Haiti struck, and that's because of Twitter and things like that. But you know, it goes all over the place. I do like knowing which celebrities have died before my mom can tell me. But what we were doing with Mom the Vote was we were not reacting to anything. We were creating something. We created something on Twitter, and then the rest of the mainstream media took notice. And that kind of blew my mind because we don't see that happening very often. And the other amazing thing was that we did it with virtually no budget. The politicians try to get their messages out there. They spend millions of dollars on advertising and on outreach. And we did this on the budget of the price of a Starbucks latte. And that was for the Starbucks latte. I mean, that was as far as our budget went. You know, and it made me realize you can start a Twitter campaign and you can get everybody you know mobilized, and you can spend lots of money, you can have fancy prizes, you can have fancy gifts, and you can have fancy things going on, and you can get celebrities involved. Or you can engage with your audience, trust your timing, and simply come up with 3 little words. Thank you very much.